Welcome, everybody, to another CIRF report. This one for March 23rd through the 29th. And there is a lot of power and control shifting hands this week. And it may or may not feel like the weighted blanket. I'll explain all this as we get into the details. Let's go ahead and surf. This being our summary slide for the influence. We're going to do another triangulation later for the solution. In other words, the behaviors to best keep in mind when you're trying to react to the energies here. So you're going to get the energies and what to expect to feel here. And then later on in the show, we're going to talk about how to best behave to accentuate the energies here for success. Obviously, we don't want to feel more oppressed, but I'm going to show you how this I-Ching reading 47 is not what it looks like. I mean, it looks like we're all buttoned down, the weighted blanket and all that, but it's realizing the oppression and breaking free from it. And you're going to see that in the astrology. So it's the action of waking up to it and breaking out of it. The power and control is coming from two places: Mars, shifting into Cancer in a fall. Mars is part of power, our yang, our outward power, kind of running in water now once we get into Cancer. Then the other power and control is Pluto. Pluto is the inner power. It's going to shift into Aquarius, very first thing in this surf week. So power and control, outward and inward, is all shifting hands. So big shifts this week, big shifts, and a lot of that having to do with power and control. Then we have this square from Aries over to basically Cancer, Mars, and it's causing conflict, pressure to get something done. It's in Aries versus Cancer, so you can kind of see the contradiction there. And then lastly, we have the waxing crescent moon, so the very first part of and up to the first quarter moon, which gets the engine started. But we're already in Aries. The moon cycle, this moon cycle is an Aries cycle. Remember from last week's new moon. And how was that new moon for you all? Was it very energetic? Was it showing you that you need to really focus in on your identity and search for self and take care of yourself? Well, if not, this week should. All right. And then lastly to cover is the dream bot. This is the collective unconscious, all about love and gratitude with a little bit of elbow grease. And I'll explain that here in a second. Low congruency score because elbow grease pretty much has to do with the outward power that we talked about, outward yang, Mars. And so that's triangulated here, but then the love and gratitude is much more associated with the solution, as you'll see later. So not really anywhere in the astrology influence. All right. With that said, let's move on. Big shout out to our best commenter, Not For Me To Say, gives us the wisdom from his old pop. My pop always told me to stay consistent, and right will, I think, says win out. Right will win out. His wisdom always seems relevant. Well, big shout out to you. Thanks for commenting, Not For Me To Say. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. Here's the collective unconscious, otherwise known as the dream bot. Number one word in the collective unconscious with a 75, almost 76 surge scale score is love. Top word is love. Second word is thanks. So it's all about love and gratitude. Those are all the red arrows. Very compelling. And let me darken this up so you can see where my cursor is, if you couldn't already. And then the blue arrows is quite a bit of elbow grease, meaning hard work. And unfortunately, when Mars goes into fall or goes into Cancer, and by fall, I mean kind of gets weakened, but everything about that planet in a fall, in an astrological term, for it's less easy now. So everything's harder for Mars. So yeah, that makes sense. We got this elbow grease. We got to work harder than we otherwise would have when Mars was in Gemini. Now, currently, as I'm writing this, Mars is in Gemini and will be throughout the next few days until we get into the weekend. That's when the elbow grease starts to ramp up and then needing to do a lot more. Also, there's something we'll probably not touch on because there's just so much other energy, is the Venus in Taurus. And Taurus being a really hard-working zodiacal sign, with Venus at home in Taurus, it is about valuing hard work and elbow grease. So there's a couple indicators there. But the love and the gratitude is, as you're going to see, all about the solution, and we'll describe all that later. All right, let's get back to this board and we'll talk about the astrology. So remember, March 2023 is just big, profound shifts and intense energies. So Pluto, after 20 years or more in Capricorn, is moving into Aquarius. Technically, Pluto goes into what's called a fall, meaning that Pluto has to work harder in Aquarius. It's not quite as easy as it was before. Now, Pluto, having been last time in Aquarius, was all the way back just after the Revolutionary War. In fact, while Pluto is in Aquarius, or was in Aquarius back then, there was another revolution that happened during that time. So that revolution is the Aquarius. Pluto is the overhaul, and it's the transformation planet. So, and it is about power and control. So it's giving the power and control back to the individual. A lot of people hate those words. I don't understand that, being an Aquarian. I love independence. I love being an Aquarian. Now, as we progress throughout the week, as I mentioned before, Mars will be shifting into Cancer, and that is also in a fall. So all the power and control in the astrology, in the planets, is harder, and it's shifting gears. So that'll be interesting. We'll go through in more detail as we get into day by day. Next, if I didn't hammer home the importance of power and control, here we have Mars in conjunct Pluto in this blue, and it's power versus power. Not technically versus, it's more of we're adapting to each other. So we're seeing, Pluto, the inner power, is seeing the outer power playing out and how hard he has to work and whatnot. So adjusting, maybe ramping up the inward power and vice versa. So both of these are working harder because they're seeing the other power and control being kind of weighed down, i.e. the weighted blanket. Starting to make sense? Well, it will hopefully make a lot of sense. Now, here's one thing that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, and I don't have a chart for it. Kind of don't need a chart, but basically Pluto, the 23rd of March, 2023, is moving into Aquarius for the first time since 1788, something like that, or 78, something like that. So 240 years plus it takes Pluto to go all the way around and return to the same zodiac sign. But here's the gig. This time around, Pluto is going to go in to Aquarius, then retrograde back into Capricorn. And then in 2024, go back into Aquarius, then retrograde again back into Capricorn. Then for the first time, and staying in Aquarius for 19 years, is November 19th, 2024. That's when Aquarius is permanently in Aquarius for the long haul, for the next 19 years. Okay, so there is some dancing around the cusp. And what this means is we're going to see a little bit of taste. Now, here's the thing with Pluto and Aquarius as manifested the last time it was in there. Yeah, we have this independence theme already playing out. And once Pluto goes into Aquarius, you can see that there's more revolution, French Revolution, much more fighting to continue to work towards the full independence, right? So it takes a while. That's the point. It's a subtle force, a tiny little planet way out in the middle of nowhere. It's having this slow, powerful, but very subtle energetic transformation of that sign, in this case, Aquarius. So we'll get a little taste from March of this year, March 23rd. That's Thursday in this CIRF week until June 11th. In that time, Pluto will be going retrograde and will return into Capricorn on June 11th, all the way to January 20th, 2024. Okay. Now, things that I want you to pay attention to, because I thought this was really interesting. The day that it starts going retrograde this year, 2023, is May 2nd. Okay. That may not mean anything to you right now, but hold on. And then later in the fall, around October 11th, on October 11th, this is when it returns to direct and then progresses back towards Aquarius, October 11th. So remember, May 2nd, October 11th. May 2nd is retrograde. Direct is October 11th. Why is this important? Well, let's shoot to 2024, and we have the same drama playing out again. January 20th through September, it's in Aquarius. But sometime in there, guess what day? May 2nd. Interesting, huh? So the start of the retrograde in both years is both May 2nd. It gets even stranger. Then it's from September 1st to November 19th is when at November 19th, 2024, Pluto will go into Aquarius. But sometime in there, oh, look at that, October 11th, 2024. So we have the same exact retrograde day, and we have the same going direct day in both years, 2023 and 2024. None of the other days matches up. All right. So I just thought that was really interesting. Quite coincidental. I mean, it's not even a day off. It's the same day in the different years. So anyway, so big picture, Pluto's going to be dancing on the cusp between Aquarius and Capricorn. In this early part of the drama, we're going to start seeing a little bit of evidence and a little bit of foreshadowing for what Pluto is going to do in Aquarius. For the long haul, we're going to get a little taste of that between March 23rd and June 11th this year. All right. So look for the subtle influences on power. Look for the subtle shifts towards independence. Yes, Aquarius is part of collective concern and all that, but much more in application, behavior-wise. Let me do my thing. Let me be me. Yeah, I'm worried about you guys, but let me be me. That's the Aquarian. And that's what you'll see the shift to over time, but it does take time. So you won't see the full manifestation until November 19, 2024, and beyond. The next 19 years, Pluto will be in Aquarius. All right, and here it is. Speaking of which, Pluto goes into Aquarius at 7:23 a.m. Central Daylight Savings Time, Thursday the 23rd. And there it is. Pluto enters into a fall, meaning that his influence is a lot more difficult. He has to work a lot harder. It takes more time to get that stuff transformed. That's the Planet there of transformation, death and rebirth, but it takes a while because it's such a small planet anyway, so far out there anyway, but now he's in a fall, meaning things are harder. And here you see the in conjunct with Mars, the two power planets. And by the way, these two power planets are rulers of Scorpio. Scorpio being the power and control zodiac sign, it makes sense that both of them have something to do with power and control. Well, they're adapting to each other. Pluto being the deep inside layer of power, your inner power, and Mars being your outer power or your physique, your physical doing, your behaviors, and your reactions. But there's an uneasiness here. They're both, well, right now it's just Pluto in a fall. Mars will be very shortly. He's at 29 degrees, 3 minutes of Gemini. So just one more degree and we're into another fall. All right. So we have that, and they're both adapting to each other. So there's some definite shifts there as they adapt to each other. And then the trine, so Mars is also trined to Saturn, and this Maleficent is producing easy limitations on Mars. Limited compassion being one of them, limited kind of feeling of connection with others. So there's this aloneness over here with Mars, or your yang power, your own physical power. Then Mars is also squared off to the Sun and Neptune. This will be a factor, a big factor in the weighted blanket feel, because he's energetically furthest distance away from home, home being Aries, and so conflicted, greatly conflicted, also pressured. There's this pressure to get stuff done. Mars is going to have some difficult time producing that. Number one, right now, even with Mars not in fall or not in a weakened state in Cancer, Mars is squared off to Neptune. So things are tricky. We've been talking about this for quite a while. And it is waning. You can see the dashed lines here. So the energetic layout of the square is diminishing, but with the Mars and the Sun is diminishing very slowly because they move approximately the same speed relative to Earth. Let's move into Friday, the 24th, and we highlight our Taurus aspects here because we have Venus and Uranus in about a 7 degrees, so they're inside of a conjunction. So this is where we're going to see changes in value, changes in relationship. Maybe relationships are going to produce some insight, an invention or two. That's a Uranus aspect. But all about value, hard work, elbow grease, things that the collective unconscious talked about. Emotionally charged change to value and worth. Venus in Taurus is a ruler of Taurus, but when it's in Taurus, it's much more value and worth oriented rather than love and beauty. Sensuality is in there, the five senses, really wanting to experience the full-blown goodness of being human in the physical reality, seeking that out, finding value in nicer things. And so that's there. And it's associated with a waxing crescent moon, meaning that this is the hard work that's really required to get the engines running in this Aries cycle. Remember, our last new moon was last week in Aries. And so we have Aries goals and visions for this lunar cycle. And this is the time leading up to the first quarter moon where you can kind of get stuff started. And that's a great thing for Taurus. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get the engine in Taurus started. But once you get that started, want to get that done before the moon gets to the first quarter or squared off to Sun, because things get a little harder. Meaning the squares and the Mars yang aspect going into Cancer power and control, all in a fall and weakened state, etc. Saturday, the 25th. Here's where we see Mars going into Cancer at 0 degrees at 6:45 a.m. on March 25th, daylight savings time in the Central Time Zone. And Mars in Cancer is basically like running in water. Yeah, it can be done, but everything's harder. It's slower, much more methodical. It's got the heavy weighted blanket on you. Ironically, now it's Cancer, so Cancer is probably going to be seeking a little bit more comfort. It's going to value more comfort over getting stuff done potentially, because things are harder. When you're carrying something weighted, it's heavier. Everything's harder. Much more effort, easily overwhelmed. You might feel exhausted easier. You might feel procrastinating is easy, and that's associated with a combination between things are harder plus seeking comfort, homebody. Sunday, the 26th, the positive aspect of the zodiac this week is thoughts. And Aries thoughts are impulsive, very assertive, can be aggressive, but quick-witted, but very, very quick, and can stand up for yourself. And it has a healing effect, but also a positive transformation, not transformation, but positive towards expansiveness. So mind is full. It's only 2 degrees away from each other. Mercury being the lower mind, Jupiter being the higher wisdom mind, and very optimistic. But the Aries feel and flair to this, we can really take care of ourselves. So your best fighting maneuver, if there is one, taking care of yourself, is the way you talk and the way you communicate. And it can be very assertive, very full-minded, very wise, and then impulsively wise because of that Jupiter in Aries. And it has a healing effect. So truth and exposing truth has a healing effect. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power in this, because you've got the logical knowing, and then you've got the Jupiter higher wisdom knowing, transcendent knowing. And when you do the Aries thing with that knowing, which is to just blurt it out, the honesty, the genuineness, authenticity, it has a tendency of healing. Knowledge is power. So there's your bright spot in this zodiac, lasting all week long. And I wanted to point that out. Monday, the 27th, Mercury is now 1 degree away from Jupiter, so that all that I just mentioned is stronger. We have that benefit here. And we have Venus and Uranus in 4 degrees, so just getting you updated there. The moon is in a first quarter, or starting its first quarter, only 4 degrees away from a perfect square. That's the definition. The perfect square is with the sun is the definition of the first quarter. So not quite there, still in the first crescent stage, waxing crescent, as the moon makes its way home to Cancer, not quite there yet. On Tuesday, the 28th, now we're starting to see some ramp up of squares. This is the time, 8:19 a.m., where the moon and Mars are in the height of this weighted blanket feel. So because we've got moon is Cancer, it's home and ruler of Cancer. Mars is playing by those rules, so it's very emotional, but still weighted down with possibly emotion, but more of a yin state. Yin doesn't do well on yang, and vice versa, so it just slows the yang down quite a bit. So this is a conflicted, and it's tricky, so it's confused because it's got Neptune, The sun, obviously, is your ego, wanting, needing to get out there and go, 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 but it's conflicted with your yang aspect in water, running in water. So there's not really an outlet for ego to get that done. Pressure to do it, but unable to do it, or everything's harder to do. So therefore, you're going to start to get ego is a little bit frustrated or a little bit guilt tripped on this because you're not getting all the things that you wanted to get done. There's a pressure to get it done. And then we are at the first quarter moon, 6 degrees away from a perfect square, but this I consider to be the heaviest part of the weighted blanket, the heavy blanket on humanity or on the collective. It's even heavier now. You're deeper into water. You're running in water. It's oppressed. You know what I forgot about the I-Ching? I apologize because we've had a lot of astrological layouts with Pluto in a fall, Mars in a fall, but now Mars in a fall conjunct moon. It's max oppression energetically. Your yang is max oppressed, feeling kind of trapped with under the weighted blanket or the swaddle in a little kid or a little baby. And it's when the baby is kind of like starting to get agitated, where I've been laying down, I've been swaddled for hours, and now I just want to get out. That's the feeling this week. The feeling, the realization that you have been oppressed. And it doesn't feel good. It feels trapped. And so strangely, swaddling also feels comfortable. You know, if it's not swaddled, the baby can hit himself in the head and just kind of get easily agitated and start crying and all that. So you can start crying in a swaddle too. But there's this irony of feeling comfortable that is in the Cancer energy. All right, enough of that. And then Wednesday, the final day of our CIRF week, just lots of pressure, lots of conflict. It's the pressure to yang it up because remember the moon in its, this is it's not the last quarter, but it's between the first quarter and the full moon is the time, the high time to get a bunch of crap done towards your Aries new moon goals. This is the time to do it. But unfortunately, we're weighted down, we're running in water. Power is all the power in the zodiac is falling right now. As above, so below. Will we see an automatic disassembling of the power and control of this world? Something to think about, huh? All right, let's get into the I-Ching. We are looking at the influence of Hexagram 47 called oppression. Times of great loss or personal failure can break some people, but the strong of heart are able to bend with their fate. To endure hard times or even benefit from them, you are called upon to tap the deepest stratum of your identity. That would be akin to Pluto. And Pluto now is begging you to be your best self, to accept your highest self, tapped awareness and potential. Line 2 of the I-Ching says, anchor that kept your mind mired in your troubles, real or imagined, is being lifted. The collective grand awakening is imminent. Strong new energy will become available to help you. The future suddenly grows brighter. That is definitely the Mercury conjunct Jupiter. You have been oppressed by bonds that can now be broken, and recent troubles are drawing to an end. Oh my God, this is amazing. Your problems may be more illusionary than real at this point. Let's see here. I'm going to show you the graph later, but I'm going to first send you into the solution slide. Whoa. There we go. Wrong button. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, we have the baby in a swaddle. This is mainly, well, it's exacerbated by Aries squared off to basically Cancer. We have 2 power planets in detriment, or I'm sorry, in fall. And so strangely, the swaddle feels comfortable right now, but realizing that it's really trapping us and keeping us under the heavy blanket feel. So here was the overview of the influence. Power and control mechanisms get rocked this week, with Pluto and Mars both taking big falls. This includes a drop in personal power and your overall yang output, making for a heavy blanket feel. A desire for comfort trumped by guilt-ridden procrastination, remember that's coming from Sun square Mars, and the confusion, which is Neptune square Mars. Ironically, the lunar cycle provides opportunity to get your Aries goals met now and next week, but unfortunately, the heavy blanket of comfort just makes that difficult. And the hexagram is 47. All right, so let's get back to our graph and what we're going to see. The blue is the heavy blanket feel. It's diminished as now, of course, we do have Pluto moving into Aquarius, but that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the heavy blanket other than the inner power is in a fall. So there is some amount of heavy blanket, but it really goes through the roof when Mars, the outer power, goes into Cancer and then just accelerates when up to the point where the moon conjuncts Mars. That's the max on Tuesday of your heavy blanket feel. The only other energy is the power struggle. That's the in conjunct with Mars and Pluto. That's strong all week. It starts to ramp up about the same time. And obviously, we're looking at the 2 different lines based on Mars. Both of these lines have to do with Mars. So where Mars goes this week is a very important thing. And the resulting feeling of how we're going to experience it. All right. So the maximum for the power struggle is happening starting on Saturday. I would say that the power struggle starts at a higher point in this graph. And so the more dominant of the 2 at the earlier part of our week is based on the inner and the outer power struggle. And then the weighted heavy blanket thing with the Cancer and Mars will be climaxing around Tuesday. All right, both of these will crest off into the following week. All right, so that's the influence. Now let's talk about the solution. Excuse me, let me get a little bit of a tea break. All right, hexagram 12. Summon up your fortitude, don't shine your light. Simply withdraw. Remember, we're looking for behaviors in this because this is going to feed into our triangulation later. So it's basically so far stand still. Hexagram 12 is basically saying don't shine your light, just withdraw. The wise take shelter in their own integrity and quietly remain faithful to their principles. So make sure you keep your values in mind. Retreat from public activities and common exchanges until the times favor direct action. Concentrate on personal affairs. I find this really interesting how the I-Ching behavior recommendations, i.e. withdrawing and don't shine your light too bright and all that, just concentrate on your own personal affairs, is very much appropriate based on what we've seen from oppression and Mars going into Cancer, right? I mean, even just the Cancer aspect is here. Concentrate on your own personal affairs. Yeah, Cancer is interpersonal, emotionally bonding with others, but does like to be at home. So doesn't have a problem isolating necessarily, as long as there's comfort there. Desiring to change such a situation too quickly creates extra conflict. This statement is going to go right into the rave, which I'm going to read here in a second. It's amazing correlation between the I-Ching and the rave. So, desiring to change a situation too quickly, which is what the Aries mindset, that remember Sun in Aries, wants to change everything quickly and doesn't have any problem with conflict. But unfortunately, the Yang aspect is conflicted and can't help you a whole lot. So it's risky. Okay. Creates extra conflict. I'm going to put, I found the climax of the weighted blanket feel is on this day, on Tuesday at 8:19 a.m. That's where we put our conversion in, and we get hexagram 15 of the rave, and we get Gemini, Sidereal Gemini solution. So hexagram 15 or gate 15 is called modesty. Already it's the overlap. The quality of behavior which expresses the proper balance between extremes. So what it's saying here is don't go to the extremes. And what do we see developing? We see we have some more commands by 45 saying protest, protest, protest. According to this triangulation, that's a risky aspect, unless it's anything more than communication, i.e. the Mercury and Jupiter together is where you want to spend all your, if you're going to do any kind of fighting, it would just be in thinking and in communication. In terms of behavior, it is not wise to be going out and doing any sort of behavioral extremes. Let's go into line 4. The wallflower, modesty as a shield against exposure to inadequacy. It's basically the uncomfortableness of self when it is out of flow versus extremism that keeps the self out of flow. I want you to rewind that and listen to it again. I'll read it again for you. This is really important. The uncomfortableness of the self when it is out of flow. And that is on the positive end of our reading here. So what's that say? That says that you're going to be uncomfortable and feeling out of flow this week. That's what this is saying, based on Moon conjunct Mars in Cancer. The uncomfortableness of the self when it is out of flow. But some of us will not be okay with that uncomfortableness and hence go to the extreme to try to fix it. Try to fix the uncomfortableness. Well, guess what happens then? You will be out of flow. Okay? So you need to be okay with being out of flow this week. All right. Let's put everything together. Oh man, I probably had. Yeah, that was okay. All right. Disregard. Let's go into the triangulation for the solution. And let's see what we have. We have in the blue circle, we're going to triangulate all 3 of these. The I-Ching 12 says stand still, retreat from public activities and common exchanges. Concentrate on your personal affairs, which is a direct match to Mars in Cancer. Rave Mandala says modesty. Modesty is a shield against exposure to inadequacy. Remember the continuum here. Being uncomfortable out of the flow versus setting off to do extremism to fix it, and then you find yourself or keeping yourself out of the flow. All right. So don't go fixing your uncomfort. It's a big one. And then Sidereal Gemini gives us the versatility and alertness to really take care of ourselves. So let's do the triangulation, and it sounds like this. It's pretty clear that self-preservation is the main solution this week, starting with the versatility, alertness, and agility of Gemini. Your posture should remain poised and nimble for whatever unpredictable occurrence needs to be addressed. Maintain high energy, even though a retreat is called for in the I-Ching 12 standstill. Okay, so the extra energy that's being called here is for self-preservation, not for going to fight, not for going to the extremes. All right. Concentrate almost entirely on your own preservation or advancement. Now, this is also a match to the Aries cycle, but this is the only way in which it's not in sync with that cycle, because it's the solution so far is not taking huge lurches into advancement in the outer world, something that the Aries cycle loves to do. So what I'm saying is, even though we are retreating so far, the solution so far is in alignment with the Aries cycle, which is good. Sun still in Aries. We have the new moon cycle in Aries. And so nothing is out of whack with this, even though we're receding and moderating, going inward, or just going into your self-preservation mode. But at the same time, it's hard to imagine an Aries energy becoming a wallflower. But the rave warns of imminent exposure to damaging inadequacy, and it says that extremism that is required to overcome the uncomfortableness of these challenges will create a severe imbalance in you. It will keep you from the flow. So it's not about staying comfortable. It's about self-preservation through avoiding, receding, and moderation. This is a direct contradiction to what a lot of people are calling for, given the state of affairs right now, particularly with 45. Now, what's interesting to me with the Dreambot, remember the Dreambot top word is love? Well, I had this written out several days ago. Because of self-preservation, the law of one states that pure love is your most powerful defense. So I thought of that immediately, and I wanted to put that first. Love is my most powerful defense. I realize the importance of why I am here on this planet at this time. I fear nothing. Because if we're suggesting self-preservation as a behavioral suggestion in triangulation, that must mean that there's some sort of disruption. The power falls might be a part of this. The Mars in conjunct Pluto might be a big thing. The Pluto going into Aquarius temporarily for a few months, that might be a big thing here. But no matter what, no matter if there's threats or not, even if there's no disruption or not, there's going to be some uncomfortableness with kind of feeling out of the flow, partly due to Mars and Cancer. But love is going to be my most powerful defense, period. Period. And you don't want to be spending a lot of time in fear, although you do want to be honoring things that you're noticing. You do want to be aware. You want to stay aware this week. You don't want to push fear away, but you want to use the anxiety to help you increase your concentration and threat watching and looking, but you don't want to be living in fear. You don't want to be hypothesizing about what's happening. You want to be looking for direct evidence. And so that's how you use your anxiety, if there is any. The fear is telling you that you need to be in self-preservation, but don't live in fear. You notice the difference? So, love is my most powerful defense. That's according to the law of one. That's all the defense you need. All right. Well, everybody, I appreciate you being here. I know this was a very complex week. It is going to be a complex week, I think. as above, so below. And so love is my most powerful defense. How about that? Thank you, everybody, for being here, for being in this tribe. I honor you. I honor your individual values, interests, and this week about self-preservation. All right. Tell me if I'm wrong, or tell me if you've seen anything different indicated in the collective unconscious or the astrology. I'm all ears. Other than that, have a great week. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones and your family, and we will see you next week.